So, hi, I'm Dr. Brian Applequist. This is going to be another biomechanics interview here. I'm with my friend Dana, and I'm very happy that she's able to spend some time with us, and hopefully you guys as students can gain some insight into where you want to go based off of her experiences. So welcome, Dana, and thank you for your time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about you, where you're from, where you're at right now, where did you go to school, your degrees, all of that kind of stuff, Dana.
Sure. So I grew up on the East Coast. I'm from Connecticut. I first went to Springfield College in Massachusetts, thinking I kind of wanted to do more athletic training, strength and conditioning. Majored in kinesiology there. I transferred after my freshman year to Arizona State and studied exercise science because I really enjoyed more of the biomechanics aspect of my intro to kinesiology and anatomy classes. So while I was at ASU, I really focused more in some of the advanced biomechanics and was also doing a internship at Athletes Performance, which is now called Exos. And when I was at that facility, we're working with some of the top professional athletes in the world. And they had a lot of these great people who were also doing side research. And I kind of was like really intrigued by that work more than actually working with the athletes hands-on. And then also with this like love for footwear, I kind of realized that all these like passions were kind of coming together. And so I was like thinking, how can I get into footwear research and how can I improve athletes' performance and abilities, but doing it from a research and science perspective. So out of that, I decided to go to UNLV, mastered in, I guess it's considered exercise science, but with the biomechanics focus. While I was there, I was assisting the engineering team on some of the prosthetic work. Wasn't super intriguing to me. I knew that that wasn't something that I wanted to go forth with, but it was an opportunity that was provided. Out of that, I moved, I knew I wanted to get into footwear. And so it was really hard time in the economy to find a job. So what I sort of settled for was kind of a local tech rep position for Brooks. What was really great about that was I was able to like meet running consumers and see what running is all about because I was not a runner, I was an athlete. And so it really set me up for
athletes aren't runners.
Runners
aren't athletes.
Yeah, I play field hockey. I meant more of a team sport athlete. I didn't move in a linear motion. I moved much more differently. So edit. I'm just kidding. And then from there, I moved up at Brooks. So I became fit and wear test analyst because, it was kind of this hybrid between talking to people and then working with the labs and working with the product creation team to see like how can we make the shoes better from all different angles, color, fit, biomechanics. But when I was in that position, I really learned more about the product creation team and the cycle. And although I had originally thought my goal was to be in the lab, I really didn't want to be just like watching people run for like 7 minutes on a treadmill, marking them up and reducing the data every day. Because at the time, that's really where Brooks was. We were becoming number one in the market. We had really strong goals and there were really strict business needs. And so it was kind of like, let's just get after this goal of being number one in running shoes. So for me, I didn't really like that aspect of it. And I kind of slid into the product developer role while I was at Brooks. The two teams were really close together, which I loved because it gave me the ability to be super creative from like an aesthetic perspective. I had to still find a lot of solve a lot of problems with like making footwear and then also how the biomechanics could work together with like the tooling and the molds and how those sorts of things could affect the biomechanics, but I wasn't like the one reducing the data. So I really learned that that was kind of my dream job. And, I've moved to a couple different companies since then doing that role. But more recently, I've shifted into material development, which is slightly off topic from biomechanics. But that's the job I hold right now. Yeah.
So tell us, where do you work? You kind of just touched on a little bit on the journey to get there.
I currently work for Adidas. I work in the Yeezy team. I work on the Yeezy team. So it's a lot more than what people see just in the market. I think we're doing a lot of really creative, innovative work behind the scenes, and it never makes it to production. But yeah, I work in LA on collaborations.
You got all of this time spent on developing products, and then you have one person at the top that says yes or no.
Basically, yeah. And yes, he has a lot more say on the shoelace, on where the flex grooves can go, where, how the collar foam should fit. So it's challenging to kind of balance what from an integrity perspective of how your foot should be or is to what somebody wants it to be. It's interesting conversations.
It'd almost be better if you didn't know any of the biomechanics of foot function and whatnot.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because I was really brought into this team because of both my knowledge of biomechanics and anatomy, and then also like my history in performance footwear, because that's really the ask from KINE is like, how can we make a running shoe? How can we compete in these performance products? But then quickly, I think the team learned that like if we presented him with 7 options of a running shoe, it looked too running, right? Because it functionally all running shoes in theory look the same, right? They have the same silhouette, the same features, because that's what makes a good running shoe. And to look very different in that space or any performance space is really hard, right? Because there's reasons for that. So it's a conversation that I kind of gave up on wanting to have.
You end up with a shoe that looks like an Under Armour shoe. It just doesn't function very well.
Yeah, you said it, not me.
All right, so you've kind of left the biomechanics, but you still have that foundational knowledge that informs what you're doing in work. But what do you do on a typical day at work?
Yeah, I mean, and to speak even more, like probably more as like a developer than my current role in materials, just because I think it's more relevant, is, what we're really doing is we a collective triad, so a product marketing person, the product designer, the developer, some of the tech experts, we're sitting down and we're looking at the samples, or the tech pack, and we're really reviewing all the nuances of how that shoe is coming together and how it's made. So whether we're looking at the tooling drawings of the CAD drawing to make sure that when we open the mold, it's going to work and look like what we want it to look like. Also, from an internal perspective, like we're choosing the correct last that's going to either fit that correct foot shape and make it look the way we want it to do and also function properly. So there's a little bit of connection to sort of biomechanics in both of those two aspects. And then a lot of my job too is, as a developer, is from the manufacturing and commercialization aspect of it. So if you think about what a product developer is, it's almost like we are, like we're not the expert in any one specific thing, although people have their strengths and weaknesses, but we're almost like the quarterback or the project manager of that shoe. So we take it from all the way from the designer hands off a piece of paper that says like, here's an idea I have, to even when the shoe is in the market and returns or customer service complaints are coming in, we're also managing it all the way to that aspect as well. So kind of like all the different aspects of how a shoe can be made. I find the most interesting things though are the shoe making aspect of it. I don't care so much about like the timelines and does it need to go on a sea or an airplane. That doesn't interest me at all, the supply chain aspect of it. I really enjoy more the problem solving of how the shoe can be made. So like I said, when I was working more at Brooks, it was a lot more like, hey, if we had a biomechanics goal for that shoe, like if we were working on the Adrenaline GTS, for example, and there was a goal to like reduce the rate of inversion, right? Like there's something so specific like that by a certain percentage. We worked with the designers and the biomechanics team when we were looking at the last and the tooling drawings to say like, is it the hardness of the foam? Is it the shapes and the geometries of the midsole? Like how do all of these things kind of work together in order to achieve the goal of that product? In my current job, does Kanye like it? That's the goal. But I think at Brooks and, you know, a little bit when I worked at Columbia, we were going after those things a little bit more. So biomechanics knowledge isn't necessary to do my job, but I think if you're working in certain teams or categories or companies, it's imperative, I think, to do your job, to do this job successfully.
When you were at Brooks, there's a much smaller unit as well. Because there's just two and an intern in the biomechanics lab, I believe.
Yeah.
And then there's teams of 3 or 4 on the developer side.
Yeah.
And so
I mean, I know it's grown. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean,
it's definitely grown, but it was super small. Yeah.
I'm not going to age you, but yeah, that was a little while ago.
Okay.
But just looking at the brands themselves, like Brooks, no one looks at a Brooks shoe and says, "Wow, that's a good looking shoe," but it's going to function well and as far as the biomechanics and running.
I still run in Brooks, and I always tell people when they say, "What kind of Adidas shoe should I get for running?" I'm like, Brooks. So,
yeah, I'm sure that the higher ups love that too.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is being recorded, so it is what it is. But I thought that when I worked at a small company like Brooks, every company would function that way, where biomechanics goals would be the number one, right? Because in running, your shoe is your tool. Like, sure, there's nutrition and water, but you know, your shoe is your tool. And when I started moving to different companies and larger companies, I realized that was not the number one. It's sales, it's business. And it's not to say at Brooks, business is not money at Brooks anymore either. So I'm sure that their priorities have shifted slightly, but that's what makes them so successful. And there's a little bit of integrity there that I definitely miss from going to other companies.
Yeah, I wonder if the now being with Berkshire for a little bit longer, if that's changed to where it's more of the driving the sales goals, less
well, they
on the
just
science
hit $1
side.
billion, I think, last week. And so I'm sure that money is very important to them.
Yeah, probably.
And I should say that now they still, Brooks as a company still doesn't make as much money as Yeezy does as just a category. So they're still so small in comparison to the team that I work on today, financially.
But it takes what, about 5 pairs of Brooks to equate to the price of a Yeezy too, unit wise.
No, only like 2. No,
Brooks are expensive, but the aftermarket is where you see the price tag on the Yeezy.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So you said that when you were an undergrad and when you knew you wanted to work in footwear, you had a passion for shoes, and a lot of other people are interested in footwear and the potentials of going into that industry. So you've mentioned you've stopped at a few different places. So what was different working in the footwear industry than what you originally had imagined or dreamed of?
I mean, I didn't know that a developer role existed at all. So it really wasn't until I got up to the office and met them. Like, I had already been with the company for 9 months and I still didn't even know that my role existed. So I thought, like, oh, you either draw the shoe and then you do research on the shoe. I didn't actually think like there were people who has to make it. Like, it didn't even cross my mind. So I mean, for sure, I think like that was my biggest like aha moment, because for me, I realized that was what I wanted. I don't know, but I think overall it was pretty like on brand for what I expected. I think my bigger realizations at the time were like I was a pretty overconfident college student and I didn't understand why deadlines couldn't be hit. Like why you wouldn't just work as late as you had to like hit the deadline, because here I am coming out of grad school where like if you miss your thesis dates, like you don't graduate, you know? So I'm like, it was very like life or death to me. Like you have to hit that time. Like, what do you mean you're not going to give me a text? I think it was more stuff like that, but I think that would happen anywhere, not just in footwear.
That's more of a Dana personality trait though.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's one lesson your job has taught you that you think everyone should learn at some point in life?
I think for me, what I would say is being in the position where you're kind of like the quarterback of the project creation. I think overall, I get really frustrated when people don't see how their choices affect the downstream, because I have full visibility to everything. So I think for me, it's like, first of all, it's like making sure that on any team you work on, it's like really clear expectations and everyone's like really good transparency and communication, and then giving people, like showing people how their choices will affect, you know, X, Y, and Z down the line. And that's like a life lesson, not so much like footwear, but I definitely wouldn't have learned that if I wasn't in this position. And of course that goes into other aspects of your life for sure.
Yeah, you can't just function in your silo and not expect there to be consequences. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
And
think
I would also say too, like lean on people and lean on experts. Cause like I said, in my position, I'm not expected to know everything, but I have to go find the answer. And so I have to be humble enough to be like, okay, I don't know. But I have to go find out and be curious enough to go do that.
you've grown a lot, Dana.
I know.
Let's see, where am I at up here? In your industry, in your opinion, what do you think is the most important personality trait or strength someone could have to be successful in your job?
Oh, I think more recently I've really just learned it's like the humble aspect of it, the curious aspect of it. Cause I think in shoes, in like engineering, like there's always going to be something new. There's always going to be something you don't know. And there's always going to be ways to innovate. So coming into any problem with a curious mind, I think is really important. You know, I think really specifically my job is like, you need like to be organized and you need to know facts and evidence. So I think that has sort of helped too, coming from biomechanics. Like, you know, you read lots of papers and you learn lots of things, and you kind of have to like disseminate the facts and like make your own point of view based off of all these people's studies or what they think is right or wrong. So I think a lot of that is really relevant to what I do every day, because the factory is telling me this, the designer's telling me this, my, you know, supply chains person's telling me this, but we have to come to a one solution and everyone has to get on board. So I think that's a lot of, yeah, that's probably a lot of my day, is like sussing through information and communicating it out clearly.
I think having that curiosity, and then not just the curiosity of trying to figure out how things work, but if something's broken, how to fix it, and
Exactly.
and being able to be resourceful and whatnot. That's
And
good.
it's so funny actually. Like I remember when we were at UNLV and we were like first in the lab and we are like getting a tour of the lab, and the lab tech guy was like, most likely if something's not working, it's a user error. And like that was really hard for me to accept, right? Like it's definitely not my fault, it's the machine's fault. And I can't tell you, like 99% of the time it was absolutely my fault.
Yeah, well, it was Yako's fault.
I say that kind of stuff to myself like all the time now. Like if something's wrong, I'm like, okay, what am I doing wrong? You know, and it's like so silly because I'm not in a lab and I'm not running equipment, but it's like, again, it's like it's like a snippet of a life lesson that, you know, just being in a situation like that has taught me like, okay, and if it's okay, so it's not my fault, or like it's not my problem, I'm not clicking the right button, like exactly what is option A, B, and C for how I can try to solve this right now, because there was no choice, but you have a subject there, you know, all strapped in. You're like, how do I make this work? You know, we have to solve this. And so it was like being quick on your feet too.
Yeah, I think one of the growth, some of the growth that I had was also being able to look inward for that, not just point fingers at people, and kind of take some ownership of you know, when problems happen, it's probably me, and then figure out quickly how to fix it and move on.
Yeah, for sure.
So going back to college, what was the worst class you ever took, and why?
Oh, college. Sports psychology, because I thought it was way too subjective and I couldn't understand. Well, my professor wrote the book, right? So I also didn't play the game. Like, obviously, he was right. He wrote the textbook. There was no room for questioning him. But I almost failed. Like, I almost didn't graduate because of that class, and I was so frustrated. Like, it was so dumb. I couldn't. Like, I was like, I'm gonna get a D. I'm gonna get a D. I'm not gonna be able to graduate. This is my last semester. Yeah, actually failed biomechanics the first time I took it. That was fun. I failed it. I had to retake it over like winter session because I was like, I'll just do it in like the 3-week session because I've already taken the class. I just need to pass the test this time. And I remember interviewing for grad school, and Dufek was like, so you failed this class. Why would we bring you into our program? That was a fun question to answer.
That sounds like a Janet question.
Yeah.
Let's see. What is the best or most influential or inspirational book you've ever read?
Oh, I'm looking at my bookshelf.
Come on, I know you're a reader.
I know, but I read trash novels. Honestly, I honestly, there's a book. It's about growth mindset by Carol Dweck. She's like,
that's a good book.
Yeah, where is it? Oh, here, mindset. That's what it's called, mindset.
Yeah, it's mindset.
Yeah, I think this one because it was. I found that it was super relatable because it talked a lot about sports, and I could relate to that, and not like business, but you could take it back to business. You could take it back to your daily life, and it's like a good book to read often to remind yourself, like, things aren't so black and white, or that you have to like blame yourself all the time. And not to make this about therapy, but I think for me, it's like, anything in the work, like this is the stuff you don't learn in school, right? So I just think it's helpful.
Yeah, I think that book, Atomic Habits, and you put those two together, James Clear's book.
Okay, I haven't read his book yet, but I get his newsletters and I follow him on Instagram, and I'm like, I need this, like, I need to read this book.
It's a good one, and there's a few other that are related to it. Where Clear is more. He says that he got his undergraduate in biomechanics at some small school, but there wasn't an undergraduate degree in biomechanics, so he fibbed a little bit on that. But he borrows some stuff from other authors. It puts together in a really nice manner. It's easy read, and there's a lot of valuable information to it. But Mindset and that one are both good books to put together to be successful, for sure.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for any undergraduate student that would be interested in working in the footwear industry?
For sure, network. I mean, there's now more dedicated programs. So like there's product management, product development programs at a lot of schools because people are making product, right? Whether it's outdoor industry or whether it's running or backpacks or whatever. Like there are programs and schools and classes for this now that didn't exist when I was going into that. But definitely like networking, the industry's super small. It's really incestuous, but it's really great because of that. Like it's like a spider web, like everyone knows everyone, and you can talk to people. And I have people reach out to me all the time to just be like, can I learn about your job? Can I just talk to you? Or I think that's key. And I also think like, I went out of grad school with this like huge dream and this mind of like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to make this amount of money, and anything less is inadequate. And, everyone has to start somewhere, and that didn't happen. And so it's, but again, my path wouldn't be my path if it didn't happen, so I thought I wanted to be in a lab, but if I didn't take that tech position and then I didn't become a fit and wear test person, I wouldn't have seen how I didn't want to be in the lab, and if I didn't take that internship at Athletes Performance with the best athletes in the world, I wouldn't have realized I didn't want to be a strength and conditioning coach. So it's like, try things and take the opportunities that you have to learn and be exposed to all different things, because your path doesn't have to be straight, and it shouldn't be. You can move all over.
Good. What's just last question? What's a question that you wish I'd asked you, and how would you have answered it?
How many times I ask this question in interviews to people, and I'm like, yes, such a good question. I love this question. I guess you could have asked me what's next for me.
Oh, I didn't know there was a next. I thought you were happy with it.
I don't know either. I don't know. I guess what I would just say, I'm a little bit exhausted in my current job. It's a little bit chaotic. I think I'm too old for the chaos.
Need
But I definitely,
you need another year of non-compete so you can go travel the world again.
I know that's why I need to get out of California because they don't exist here. My last job, they tried to enforce it. They're like, we're enforcing it, and I was like, okay, great, see you here. No, I think for me, it's like, I think when it comes to like what I want to, like a company that I want to work for and the product that I want to work on, I think it's almost twofold because for me, it's like, obviously you want to work for a company that aligns with your values, but I also think that it's like finding product that aligns with your values, right? So maybe my next step is working for a smaller company again, something that, maybe doesn't make billions of dollars a year or sells out in 30 seconds, but the product integrity is speaking more to my values and the company values. So I'm not saying that that's the case. I think sometimes everyone dreams of different things, but I would just say, like, for people, like, make sure you're looking at both. The grass isn't always greener and not everything's as pretty as it looks. So
but there are also opportunities that might benefit you if you do want to take that step out as well.
Sure. There's so many, like, especially these days, right? There's so many companies. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Dana, for taking the time talking with us, and
sure.
Hopefully the students were able to take away from your experiences. I know you've been all over the place, kind of like you said, you weren't linear. You're all over.
Yeah.
But I'm happy for you that you've grown up and you've landed in a good place right now, and I'm sure that we still have like a lot of years to keep working if we want to keep working. So you can
probably more than we want, actually.
maybe.
Yeah.
Hopefully you're taking that Southern California salary and investing it in some other cheaper state somewhere.
Yeah, right. I'm not. I wish.
Thanks again, and then I'm going to go ahead and end